is Norm Volsky, your host, and this is the Digital Health Heavyweights Podcast. Welcome to the Digital Health Heavyweights Podcast with your host, Norm Volsky. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the EVP of Sales at Progyny and one of the top salespeople and sales leaders in the entire digital health space, Julie Stadlbauer. So excited to have you on. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm just going to try to be a sponge. Thank you for joining us, Julie. And, would love to dive in and, kind of hear about your career and your entry into this healthcare market. So you joined, the healthcare space pretty early on in your career. You kind of moved into health insurance. Right. Tell us about how you found your way into the space originally.
I kind of fell into it, actually. I had someone that recommended me for a job at a brokerage firm in Dallas, and went to work there as an account manager. And one thing led to another, and that kind of took me to referral to a health plan. That started my health plan career, which has been most of my career. Most recently, I ended with CIGNA in national account sales there. And it's really been an incredible journey. I mean, there's been so much growth in healthcare, yet there's still so much opportunity to really fix it. And so there's constant innovation happening, and it's been an incredibly fun place to be.
That's great. So you originally lived in Dallas, now you're in California. How has this, career of yours moved you around the country?
I've moved all over the country. So I started my healthcare career in Dallas, went up to Northern California, where I spent quite a bit of time. We had an opportunity in our family back to go back east. And at that same time, HealthNet, which I was working for, had acquired some other health plans in the east, and they were consolidating. So there was an opportunity for me to go out there. And then, I had an opportunity to move back to California when I had a few job offers, 4 job offers at the time. And 2 of them were on the East Coast and 2 of them were in the West Coast. And I chose to move to CIGNA because I really liked the focus on clinical outcomes and health improvement. And that was pretty early on from a health plan perspective at that time, that, most of the other plans weren't really focused on that. And so that took me back to the West Coast, where I remain today, but I'm in New York quite frequently because our world headquarters is there, and I love it. So
I love that. Yeah, you get the best of both worlds.
Best of both worlds, and it's been great to have relationships across the country. It's a small industry, and so I've worked in many markets. It's been wonderful.
I'm glad I get to see you in New York for Conference Board and in San Diego for Conference Board. You never miss it, which is always a good thing.
I love it. It's one of the best.
So in terms of your time, working for carriers or, earlier in your career at a benefits consulting firm, tell me how that experience, what you learned from those years, and how that has helped you since moving to the vendor side in the last 10 or so.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think a lot of it is about building trust and accountability and being responsive. No matter what role, I've been in a variety of different roles: sales, account management, leadership management. And I think, a foundation of it is that it's, building a rapport with people, making sure that they know that they can count on you, listening to them, and being able to address whatever, issue or opportunity is presented at that time. And that kind of continues to move you forward and brings on other opportunities. And I think that's just carried through for everything that I've done in my career, certainly, and where I'm coaching others.
Well, it's obviously been beneficial because you've been ultra successful. Tell me how the health and benefits landscape has changed, since the time you kind of entered the market to now. What was it like in the old, early days, and what is it like, now, and what's kind of evolved in between?
Oh, it's changed so dramatically, and I think it will continue to change so dramatically. So in the early days, it was mostly the health plans and the health plan solutions, and the diabetes programs and maternity programs, and all of those programs were all baked in within the health plans, and there was a huge focus on them to address medical trends that were pretty high early on. creeping up again. So then it kind of evolved to consumer-driven healthcare and HSAs, and that was going to really introduce this concept of consumerism. And I think while that opened up many opportunities for, identifying how we make, pricing more transparent and education and all of that, I think it also opened up people's eyes to social determinants of health issues and affordability and all of that. So then it kind of evolved, and we have a lot of, point solutions that people are talking about, and care navigators. And I think, where we are now is people really trying to identify how you address high cost scenarios and health improvement opportunities, and do so with members that don't know how to interact with the healthcare system, don't understand their healthcare benefits till there's a crisis, and make it very easy for them to navigate. And so, I think there's a ton of innovation right now. I just did a podcast on AI and the applicability for healthcare, and I think that there's some opportunities there. So really excited to see the innovation that continues to happen.
I love that you're on the podcast circuit. I thought it was the one and only, but I guess not. But good for you. I'm glad, and not surprised. You got a great reputation, and a lot of people very much want to hear your opinion on all topics within healthcare. So when you joined Bloom Health, that was an early innovator in the vendor market. I don't think there were a ton of vendors at that time. After 7 years over at CIGNA, what gave you the inspiration to join Bloom, and why did you make the move from, again, very structured, very safe, large carrier to younger growth stage startup?
Right. Well, first of all, Norm, I'm honored to be part of this podcast. Thank you very much. That was a tough decision for me. It was a really tough decision. And Bloom, like many people have experienced, I wasn't looking for a job at that point. I was happy where I was. I loved my leadership. I worked for Ed Lehman. But Kevin Kiefer came calling, and it was just a really unique opportunity, as you say, and something that I hadn't experienced, working in a small organization and really trying to push a concept of private exchanges that was very, very new in healthcare at the time. And so it was really exciting to me. And I knew a lot of the team that was over there. And so I took the jump, and I got an email from a good friend and someone well known in the industry, and he said, "Congratulations, you have no idea what you just did for your career. You'll never go back." And
that's great.
That is held true. I loved my experience at CIGNA. I really, the people that I met, the mission, everything was incredible. But it's just opened up just an incredibly fun, impactful, career opportunity for me.
That's fantastic. I'm sure you wouldn't change a thing. And, you've always been at the front of the line in terms of innovation. That was one of the early companies that was doing something completely different. You kind of jumped 2 feet into that. Obviously, you continue to do that later in your career at Progyny because you got there very early. And I'm sure you sold some of their first, very large national accounts. So there's a trend I'm seeing, which, is awesome. Actually, the last guest we had on this podcast was Manny Menendez, also a Bloom alumni. So, we've got a Bloom alumni thing going on this. We might have to keep that trend. Yeah, no, he gave some great insights. I'm excited to dive into some of your insights. So talk to me about what gave you the inspiration to join Progyny. How did you find them? Why Progyny? It sounded like, whenever you've picked your head up, there have been a lot of suitors, a lot of people, wanting to hire you. I'm sure that was the case when you're joining Progyny as well. Why did you choose them over all the others?
Again, I wasn't talking to anybody at that point. I wasn't looking for a job. They approached me. I had worked with in my career some of the founding customers. So I had relationships there. And then also the benefits consulting firm that was working with Progyny to kind of bring this up. I had relationships there. And so they had talked to some of the leadership at Progyny and said, "You need to talk to Julie." And so Progyny reached out, and I actually I said no for a year, almost a
Yeah.
year, just out of loyalty to the founder of the company that I was with at the time. And, and they just kept talking to me. And it was such a new concept. At that point, nobody was talking about fertility. And it really was interesting to me to help move this, opportunity forward and help people that were dealing with some challenges that they should never have to navigate with complex medical conditions and other situations. And so, so I finally decided, you know what, I'll take the jump. And it was such an interesting experience because when I joined, literally, it was fertility was no one even knew what fertility was at the time,
Mhm.
and fast forward to now. So it's been it was a great decision and led to my career nirvana.
Well, that's fantastic, and it's a good lesson for people earlier in their career. You want to make a great impression with everyone you interact with because you
Right,
never know, when someone's going to talk to someone that, could help you at some point or bring you value. And if you're bringing them a lot of value up front, usually at some point, maybe it comes back to you. So I think that's a
right.
perfect example. You did great work with your customers, you did great work and showed, amazing aptitude with your consultant friends. And when they heard about something that they thought was a fantastic opportunity, which they were right, they had a good
Right.
radar for that, you were the person that came to mind, so I think that is just such a good lesson and something I try to instill in my team and, anyone I mentor or coach or anything like that is just every day do a great job, leave people with a really good impression of you and your company, and usually good things will happen. If that's your
100%.
focus, if that's, all you do on a daily basis is make good impressions on people, that's a good way to, build a strong infrastructure for your future career growth. So you're the perfect example of that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was interesting. One of those customers that connected me when we had a finalist meeting, I was at Cigna a long time ago. They looked at us and said, "How do we know we can trust you?" And it was an incredibly powerful question in a finalist meeting and at the end of the finalist meeting. And our response was, when we fail is when we earn your trust, because, we will have problems in this relationship. Nothing is going to be perfect. And
Yeah.
it's how we respond to those problems, how we acknowledge them, how we follow through and fix them. That's how we're going to earn your trust. And so I think that's really important as you're thinking about building relationships because, no one's perfect. And it's
Uh-huh.
really about how you interact and how you respect what the other person's, objectives are. And all of that is what really helps with those relationships.
Yeah, our friend Manny mentioned like don't disappear. Like once you sell the deal, like continue to be there,
Right.
especially if things do not go to plan, because
Right.
that's where you keep a great relationship and keep your brand is
Right.
when you do the right thing when it's not an easy thing to do. So that's really
100%.
really good advice. Tell me about those early years in establishing the fertility market. Like I
Yeah.
bet you were going to certain benefits consultants and, big benefits leaders that maybe never had considered buying a fertility benefit, for their employees. Maybe they weren't even familiar with the concept. Talk about like how to build that like grassroots effort, how to have your first handful of evangelist clients or evangelist broker consultant contacts that really help you go from really cool idea to dominant company, a space that's, very much a high priority now.
Yeah, well, it was a variety of different things. So, part of it was just reaching out to some of my really close connections in the employer community and consultant community to say, hey, what do you think about this opportunity? And I think I'm going to take it and I'm going to call you as soon as I do. So
Yeah.
you got to take my call and we got to talk about it. And when I first joined, I mean, it was early on. We hadn't even had customers for 1 year. I think there were 5 customers when I first joined Progyny.
Were
And it
those
was
founder led sales or did
um,
they already
they
have a sales
were,
team? Like how
and
was it in the early years?
yeah, I was founder led, but actually the company had new leadership in January of 2017 when I joined. The first
Mhm.
clients went live April of 2016. So I was joining under new leadership. The CEO was David, at the time, David Schlanger and Pete Anevsky. And actually, when I first joined the company, I thought I made the biggest mistake of my career, because it was a town hall right in the beginning of my experience there in New York, and they were putting up stats for Progyny, and the turnover rate was 120%. Provider satisfaction was horrible,
How
and
can
I
you have over
literally
100% turnover? I don't really
it
get that.
it was a very, very tough environment. And so I literally looked up and I was like, what did I do? What did I
Yeah.
just do? And so, but their point was, we understand this. We're monitoring it, and we're going to turn this around. We're going to, and we're going to communicate with you how we do
Mhm.
so. And within 6 months, it was a completely different organization. And so, so when I first joined, people weren't talking about fertility. They didn't know what it was. A lot of the kind of sales pitch for Progyny was very technology heavy, genetic testing, ICSI, assisted hatching. And I thought, people aren't going to be able to connect to that. If you haven't gone
Mhm.
through an infertility or fertility journey, or know someone close to you that has done that, you don't know the complexities of it. So really started telling stories that people could connect to. And I pulled through my sister's journey, who she struggled for 2 years. And had we existed, I would have had my niece probably 2 years sooner than I did. But
Mhm.
so, really just talking to people about this. And I think there was a big emotional connection, for the need for this benefit, for our early initial sales, and to this day.
Yep.
With this, benefits people always are the hero. That's not the case in a lot of situations and decisions that they have to make.
Mhm.
And so it was really exciting. And one of the first sales that I had was PayPal. And Suzanne at the time was at PayPal, and she did a soft launch during open enrollment, just to talk about this new concept of Progyny, which hadn't existed before. And she had an email, by the time she got back to her office, that said, I'm reading through these materials literally in tears. What you've given my wife and I is hope again. And then, she became an advocate, and,
Mhm.
our founding customers were an advocate, and they have all networks of people. And the consultants that were hearing about this thought this is something really meaningfully different. And there's a financial impact to this that's very significant in terms of reduction of claims risk, volatility, and all of that. So it was really kind of approaching it from a variety of different angles. And then, the conference circuit, making sure that we had, a positioning that we, could leverage, and, opportunities for relationship building there. So it was kind of like a all out plan of attack. So
Yeah. No, like the patient stories are incredible.
yeah.
Lucky enough, I've had the opportunity to partner with you, and we've represented you as a third party to the market, and that's a huge part of our pitch. I try to pitch all of our clients like with a story of like how it actually impacts the end user and the patient, as opposed to just, hey, it saves employers this much money, or we get this engagement. Yeah, those are all great and it shows it works, but like, what does it mean to each person that,
Right.
is getting the service? And, I've heard countless stories of patients and families you've impacted, and I couldn't think of more rewarding work. Like, I know you have two boys. I have, my first daughter, and she's, about to turn 2 in a couple months. Like, that gift of having a family and having a child, like I couldn't imagine like a better, more rewarding thing. To like, all your success, all the sales you've made has impacted probably thousands of lives, if not more.
Oh,
So
tens of thousands. And, it's interesting. People ask me about our culture a lot. And, we're a very growth oriented company, sales driven company.
mhm.
And a lot of people come to Progyny, because they're very passionate about our mission. It's touched them personally in a lot of cases. I have many people on my team that have, with using our benefit. And, um, you know, I think everybody knows what it means when we grow, and everybody knows that means that people can have families. And so there's an incredible amount of support, for whatever we need to get things done, because we know how powerful that mission is. And so it's been incredible.
Yeah, that's great. The patient success stories, we could talk about those all day.
Yep.
let's take that aside because that's an obvious of like what you're
Yep.
proud of, since joining Progyny outside of the impacted lives, which is incredible and obviously the highlight. What else are you really proud about, from your time joining for them being, pretty small, pretty unknown company to now a
Yep.
company that's IPO'd for,
Yeah.
plenty of dollars and, become really a market leading company in an area that's like a top three, top five priority for employers. What are you most proud of that time?
Oh, a number of things. So, one is we created an industry around family building and a
Hmm.
dialogue around it and an importance for it. And we IPO'd and then and that was an incredible experience to be there. And um, uh, went to the health conference the following week, and some of the founders of other family forming companies came up to us and said, "Thank you for what you just did." And so we put on the radar, on everybody's radar screen, something that shouldn't be a challenge for people. And I think also as I look at some other, folks that we exist to help LGBTQIA plus community, the growing number of single parents by choice. And, it's really, helped them. One of my first open enrollment meetings that I had, someone came up to our table and was looking at all of the information about us and not asking me a single question. And she was standing about 10 feet away. And I said to her, is there something I can answer for you? You look interested. And she said, no, I need this, but I have a same-sex partner and it doesn't apply to me. And I said, we exist in part for you. And she started crying. And so, it's led me to experiences like working in our entire organization, marched in World Pride and in support of the LGBTQ community. So it's really led me to some experiences that I never thought I would have in my life. So just a lot of just incredible experiences. But I think the biggest one is raising awareness of the need for this and its growing presence as a must-have, not a nice-to-have scenario.
Well, I've noticed a trend of all the incredibly successful people that I know and I've come in contact with. They have a common theme in that they love what they do. And like when you actually get rewarding feelings and you feel every day you get up Monday through Friday and you're making a difference in people's lives, like it just allows people to perform at a level that few can, and maybe that individual couldn't unless they were just like incredibly passionate about what they were doing.
Right.
So, it's just really fun to see. Like, I can see the smile on your face, and I know
Mhm.
that feeling. I know what it's
Yeah.
like. And, I'm so
Right.
glad you've been able to find that. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you.
I would like you to show the audience, if you don't mind. I think the Progeny marketing team does one of the most creative, offers to
Yeah.
have at a conference booth if someone's just kind of looking around and like you take something to remember. Please
Yeah.
share the stress balls.
The stress ball. So this has been so much fun. So, as part of like, we're trying to break stigmas, right? When we're talking about, fertility, there's still a stigma around it. And so I'll never forget searching for on Google early on sperm pens and, I was afraid I was going to be triggered for something like, and
Yeah.
so now we have pens that have, I think we probably have one around here, but sperm and eggs in them. And, that's just, everybody loves those. But these are a hot commodity. And so they're sperm stress balls. And sometimes people throw them at people when they say something, either good or, not really, not smart. and,
Yeah.
and we have, we actually had a client that launched their open enrollment with like a find the sperm kind of contest, and they place them around their campuses. So we have so much fun. We have a tagline, "Yeah, baby." That's what we use internally. Every time we have a sale, we send a "Yeah, baby" notification. So we're really taking, what we do and the opportunity to break stigmas, to another level and and a level of fun. So
Yeah, like you could do something super serious, which is helping people build families, but have fun while doing it. And I think there's a, really important distinction and something I try to instill in, early career people
Yeah.
is like it should be fun. Like there is certainly a level of professionalism you have to have, like upon
Yes.
graduating college or being in your early 20s and trying to build your career. But you
Right.
also want to show your personality. You want to build really good relationships. You want to have fun while doing this.
Right.
You don't want to be boring. You don't want to just be like a, walking plain suit. You want to have personality. And I think you guys do that better than just about anyone, and you in
Yeah.
particular. So you did mention one of the things you're really proud of was the IPO.
Yeah.
Talk me through the process a little bit. Like that's a arduous process for a company, let alone like a sales leader carrying a huge number, on the revenue balance sheet. Kind of walk me through like when did it become an idea within the leadership team? How long did it take to execute? What did you need to do to prepare for that was different from just operating as a private company, and like what's changed since?
Yeah. So lots. It took, probably about a year to do that. And we were pretty quick to IPO. We went to
Mhm.
market as an employer funded benefit in 2016 and we IPO'd in 2019. We had grown so rapidly, we continue to. There, was a lot of work. Obviously, the filings that you have to do and all of that was an incredible amount of work. We brought in individuals to the organization that had expertise in going public to help us with all of that. There was, an investor roadshow, obviously, that took place. It was interesting because when you move from a private company to a public company, um, everything changes in terms of what you can say, when you can say it, approvals, SEC filings, and all of that. So there was an incredible amount of education that was done for our employees to really be aware of that, and everything down to what our membership was, what our sales were, and all of that, even to what our roadmap is and what our plans are. And that's a shift for a lot of people when you're in a private company. You can kind of make claims and you don't necessarily have to back it up,
Mm.
and we are not in that position. Not that we were never like that anyway, but it
Yeah.
just is a different level of discipline that takes place when you're publicly traded. And so so that it was an incredible journey. The day and the day we went public, everyone was so proud, and it changed everyone's lives. And
Mhm.
some people, this was their first job, and so it really, and most people don't get to experience that in their entire careers.
Yeah.
And so it just is, it's been really fun to watch people that not only have had life changing experiences, but also have really grown in the organization and matured in the organization into different roles and different levels of responsibility as we've continued to grow our business.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think, part of those rules are probably more insider trading than anything. Like, if we're just shooting the, shit and you're like, oh, by the way, we closed three Fortune 10s, in the last couple months and no one knows about it. If I go out and buy Progyny stock and,
Right.
that's going to be a 20% revenue increase, like, that's an unfair advantage. So I'm sure
100%.
there's some pieces and parts to that as well,
Yeah.
that force a public company just to be a little bit tight-lipped with any commercial progress because
Yep.
they don't want to give certain investors, an unfair advantage over the general
100%.
market. So that
Yep.
that would make sense. Um, what have you learned from your time in entrepreneurial companies? Since your Bloom days, you've worked for a handful now.
Yep.
What have you learned, coming from bigger companies before that?
Yeah. I think success really is predicated on listening, connecting and leveraging your relationships, learning. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurial companies that are founded by people that are in tech but aren't experienced in healthcare, and
Yep.
healthcare is such a different animal. And so I think really assembling a very strong team, and having people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and get it done. I mean, we didn't have a ton of resources when I joined Progyny. or Bloom, or you name it, and didn't have processes in place that were formalized like you would at a CIGNA. And so it's really, we all need to be aligned on what our mission is, what our goal is, and let's do what we can to get it done, and leverage everything that we have in terms of those relationships and knowledge and expertise to move things forward.
All right. Well, I'm going to flatter you. I don't think this is a bold statement, but I think you are one of the best employer salespeople in the whole country. I think you're one of the
Oh,
top sales leaders in the entire country.
thank
So I
you.
think my audience, who are a lot of, people who work at entrepreneurial companies, a good amount of those folks are going to be either salespeople or sales leaders, probably at
Right,
least 30, 40% of,
right,
my LinkedIn network is probably kind of in that realm. What
right.
would you say, it takes to be a really successful salesperson in this benefit space,
Yeah.
particularly?
It's a great question. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And it's a great question. I think first and foremost, it's listening. I've seen a lot of salespeople not have success because they're not connecting, they're not listening, they're not solving someone's problems because they don't even know what the problem is. They're going in
Mhm.
thinking, I know what your problem is, and I'm going to tell you how to solve it. And so I think, I try to spend a lot of time with people to say, just stop and listen, ask questions, and then tailor your responses to what they just told you, as opposed to your canned speech or what have you, to sell. I think it's connecting with people, as we've talked about through this. Relationships are really important, establishing trust and credibility. You don't
Mhm.
always have to know everything, but you need to be responsive and get back to them, and had success with answer and address whatever they needed you to. I think it's also understanding the different channels within healthcare and how to navigate and operate in those. And,
Mhm.
we've had people in my career that I've seen that have no experience in the consultant driven channel. And it's difficult. You need to really build relationships. It's not a channel that exists in other sales of other kind of products or
Yeah,
categories. And so,
super
uh,
unique.
yeah, super unique. And, and it's really important to respect it, to navigate it, to build relationships in it, but also to kind of hit it from both sides. So I think,
Mhm.
our most successful people that I've seen can navigate both the, employer direct kind of connections and relationships and building that credibility while they're also doing that with consultants. And so I think that's been really important. And I think that's from what I've seen, our most successful salespeople have
Mhm.
experience or build experience in those channels as well. And then I
All
think
right.
it's all about telling stories as well. As we talked about earlier from our early days, I think you need to talk about your solution in a way that people can connect to it and understand the value of it, um, very simply. And so, I've seen a lot of people go in with very large decks and they want to get to everything. And I think it's really about stepping back and, what are the three things that you want someone to take away from a sales meeting? Um, Start with those three things, pull them throughout your presentation, and end with those three things, so that
Mhm.
your audience, when they're asked by their CEO, what'd you learn in that Progyny meeting, they can say this, and this. And those are the things that you kind of teed up for them as priorities of what we would solve for.
All right. Well, listeners, you just heard that from top 1% of 1% of salespeople nationally. I can say that with confidence. So
Thank
write
you.
that down. Tape it, record it, listen to it weekly. That is really,
Right.
really important. And me as, a salesperson as well, like I couldn't agree more. So that was
You do have those things
fantastic.
too.
And I think, that training is key, right? Like you meeting a really high potential person and teaching them those skills, can impact their career immensely. But
Yeah.
there are certain things that a person either has or doesn't have, going into, um, a sales job if that's the career they choose. You've built a fantastic team with a little bit of help, right? We found some great people, but you found a
Yes.
lot on your own. So, what do you look for in a salesperson? Like, obviously, those are things that are teachable. If
Right.
someone comes in with a big deck, you can be like, hey, let's pare it down, make sure we listen, make sure we tell a great story. Okay. those are like great advice. But what are the things they need to have that maybe you can't teach them? And the things you look for in an interview when you're interviewing, top salespeople or someone to build out your consultant relations function or, another channel partner.
I think a lot of it is their interpersonal skills. That do they have charisma? Can they interact? Can they carry on a conversation and all of that? That's a big piece of it. And there are a lot of salespeople that don't have that, and then it's going to be, I think, much more difficult to kind of be successful as you're trying to sell. So we bring in very senior, tenured people, and there's huge value in that. But I also, have seen a lot of success for people coming in new in their career and they're hungry. And, they're willing to roll up their sleeves and learn. And it's great when you compare them with some tenured people so that they can really, learn and develop their skill set. But, I think that's a big piece of what we look for. Also, I think it's important, when you think about sales culture, you want a healthy degree of competition.
Yeah.
But we try to foster healthy competition. And so, you want someone to come in and others to really take that person and say, hey, we're going to help build you into a successful salesperson. And so we spend a lot of time trying to reinforce that as well.
How do you do that, and what are some of your strategies without giving away the secrets?
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that I think has been really powerful for us is we're a very data-driven organization. And, we're very focused on KPIs. And everybody knows, where we are on KPIs, and we're having constant conversation about where everybody is. And we try to really foster the positive impact. So we're not going to penalize people if they're not kind of hitting that. We're going to help coach them to where they need to be. Like, you need this number of activities, you need this, percentage of business in pipeline in order for you to hit your goals. And I think, another thing that's been really successful along those lines is analyzing what's working and what's not, in a very much real-time basis, and then being able to put incentives or different processes in place right away to foster the, positive outcomes that we're seeing. So, we had identified a process that was working for our most successful salespeople that was also giving us an indication of when a client was really ready to buy. And so, we put an incentive around that process for the entire sales organization. And now we're at a place where everyone is doing that. And, obviously we continue to be very successful from a sales and growth perspective. So.
All right. Well, a KPI-driven sales team, that's a Julie Stadlbauer and Michael Sturmer run sales organization, if I've ever heard one. So love to hear that.
Right.
Very nice. So I'd love, to get your advice. We already asked for the salespeople, like what advice would you give, a person looking to succeed in this space? What about sales leaders? What advice would you give to newer sales leaders, maybe earlier in their career, maybe they're in their first year or two of, going from top contributor to manager?
Right.
How did you make that transition? What did you do well? What did you learn from? What advice would you give now that you've been through it and obviously come out the other side beyond successful?
Thank you. It's a great question. And I think so many top performing salespeople then move into sales leadership, but there's usually not a lot of training or support. And being an individual contributor and then moving into management it's a huge shift. And so I think, it requires you to really look at the broader organization and goals, and your role is not to sell individual deals per se. It's to make the entire team successful and an organization successful. And I think one of the things I think a lot of people find challenging in that transition is to realize and let people, be themselves. Like, what you need to try to foster is not for everyone to be you. Like, people don't need to be selling like Julie Stadlbauer, because a lot of people have their own personalities, their own styles, and it's very successful. And so as a sales leader, it's what is that about each individual? And then how can you help support them to grow and be successful in their own individual way with their own individual style. And and in some cases it's you got to let people fail, and honestly that's probably the hardest thing for me
Yeah.
to this day is when you see something and you could be in a meeting and you could see it going in a certain direction, that you can jump in and it's not doing that, because that's an incredibly valuable learning experience for that person, and you need to let them have it. I've had very incredibly valuable learning experiences myself, and so I think that's a probably a hard thing for successful salespeople to do as they're moving into that, because it's you got to let them fly. You got to let your team fly. You got to be there to support them. You have to coach them too. After all of our meetings, we sit down and we talk about what could we have done better. And it's not punitive in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I am to this day always open to and appreciative of and ask for feedback on what I could do better. And so that's kind of what we do. And then they come to kind of the next scenario, maybe with a, improvement in certain ways.
I'm a big believer in incremental improvement. If you
Yep.
just are better than you were yesterday, you're going in the
Right.
right direction. And you do that
100%.
day after day, you get a lot better, fairly quickly. So
Yep.
I love
100%.
that. You mentioned, and I would agree, like Progyny's done a great job of bringing in really veteran people. And they've come
Yep.
in and they get to Progyny, they hit the ground running. I think you guys do a great job of onboarding and, putting yourself in a position to have people come in and succeed quickly. How do you motivate senior people who are just like, hey, I've done this before, I got this, I know what I'm doing, leave me alone? Like, how do you kind of balance that?
Right. I think connecting them with other people in the organization. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a very tight knit culture. Like our sales team, we call ourselves the fine apples, and we care about each other deeply, and we know what's happening in different people's families, and we're very supportive. And we certainly have things that happen, but I think it's when we bring people on, I look for some of the people that we've brought on because of you, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the personality that is not going to come in like a bull in a china shop, and
Yeah.
just because you won't be successful here if that's the way that you operate. And so really just getting them to connect to understand our culture, to connect to different people that have been here for a long time, to feel their leadership opportunity here. What they're bringing to this organization is not only going to help us, sell because of their relationships and all of that, but it's also going to help, raise the bar for a lot of people that are here that haven't had that depth of experience. And so I think that that's been, really important and really successful. And I've seen, incredible contributions from folks like Carol that has joined in a very short period of time, along those lines.
That's great.
Yeah.
You've worked with some really successful executives in your time, like Kevin Kiefer. He's
Right.
been very successful at multiple, successes. Pete, Karen
Right.
Ajmani, we have a handful of these folks. What do you think it takes to be a successful executive entrepreneur in this space?
Yeah.
What are the traits? Like, what are the things that some of these people have in common? What are some things where you're like, hey, if someone's got this, this, and this, they've got the tools that it takes?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I feel very fortunate to have worked with the people that I have, and learned from the people that I have. I think all of them have a focus on and discipline around goals and what we're trying to do to achieve those goals, and how to motivate people to do it. I think all of them have, a focus on trust and accountability and promoting that within the organization. I think that's incredibly important. That and empowering people.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people there to really execute. You need to empower them to be able to do so. And so, all of that. I think a lot of folks that I've worked with that I think have been very successful. And a lot of this is being discussed right now, but it's compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Kevin Kiefer. He's one of the nicest people I think ever, and he genuinely cares about people, that work for him, his, relationships, his customers, all of that. And it comes through, and it's him and it's his personality. And so I think, that leads to all the things we've been talking about, trust and credibility and all of that. And that enables you to want people to follow you in the organization. And so I think that that's incredibly important as well.
That's great. I can personally attest to the close-knit culture at Progyny. When I go to conferences and either your team's at your booth or you're hosting a happy hour or doing some activity or at dinner, like whenever I see that crew together, they're generally liking each other's company, having fun, laughing. Like it's a fun environment. I've seen it with my
Right.
own eyes, and I can't say every company in the space is like that.
Right.
So, it's really amazing some of the relationships, you fostered and built and all the trust. And, I'm sure that comes from, a lot of the support and caring, coming from the executives, down. And, that's what's enabled that. So it's fun to watch when I see it. And I try to do the same thing on my team. In
Thank you.
terms of this space, you've been in this health and wellness market for quite some time. We're going to move
Yeah.
away from your work life and now into your personal life.
Yeah.
In your job, you're traveling all the time. You probably have
Right.
some monster deals you're trying to close. You've got
Right.
all the, in-person meetings and dinners and pitches with your team that you're there to support them with. It can probably be hard to live a fairly healthy lifestyle, but somehow you pull it off. What do you
Right.
do to participate in wellness? Like, how do you stay healthy and happy, like when you're on the road a lot and, you don't necessarily have a very normal routine of just waking up and you're, at home all the time?
I wake up with the roosters and I exercise. So
Okay.
I think that's important. I think it's trying to be active and prioritizing that wherever
Mhm.
possible. And so for me, it's super early in the morning, very early before the sun rises.
Yep.
Kind of getting in that workout makes you feel better physically, mentally for the rest of the day. And you can do that anywhere. So, spin is one of my favorite things. Orange theory is another. And
Yeah.
so kind of identifying if I'm on the road, where can I do this and how can I carve that in to that? So, and it's also been fun when I travel to do that with other people. Like,
Yeah.
Karen and I, when we were meeting with Amazon really early on at Progeny, we're up in Washington and, we found a soul cycle and we did that and we had a lot of fun and we went into the meeting and it just felt healthy overall. And so
Yeah.
I think that's really important and it's hard for people to do. It's very easy to be too busy to do that. And I think it's also a good example for my children
Hmm.
because they see how busy I am and kind of prioritizing that healthy lifestyle, what you eat, drinking enough water, all of that stuff has been really important.
Well, I try to drink a full, 18, 20 ounces of water during my podcast to
That's
set a good
great.
example for Mila. And I'm sure your sons are, practicing healthy habits while
Yeah,
they're in Japan for the next couple weeks.
I
Um,
know. Lucky
in
dudes.
addition to like riding on a bike, which is a fantastic way to reduce stress, you're in a high
Yeah,
stress job. You're EVP of,
yeah,
large publicly traded company that's growing
yeah.
exceptionally well. Anything outside of exercise that you do to just kind of manage the stress and, keep a level head, even though there's, probably a lot being thrown at you?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think one of the things that I wanted and have is an executive coach,
Hmm.
and that's super helpful.
Hmm.
It's almost like therapy, and it's you can kind of talk through some of the different challenges or opportunities or dynamics that are happening and get some good like guidance and suggestions from someone that's not connected to it and has no
Hmm.
vested interest in it. And so I'm a big believer that if that everyone should have that kind of a resource
Hmm.
for them as they're navigating kind of, whatever they're dealing with in their careers.
All right, last question I have. I've asked everyone this. What are your favorite healthy recipes to make? I know you're, in hotels decent amount, but when you're home, when you're making a meal for your family, like what are your go-tos?
So we love chicken in this family.
Mhm.
We love artichokes, so we make some chicken. I make a fantastic chicken and artichoke little number, which I can share with you. And gosh, what else have we been doing? I think that's been one of our biggest go-tos. My kids are accountable to cook more frequently. They
Well, that's
started with
good.
fried rice, so not the healthiest of
Not
choices, but they
bad.
throw it all together. They're throwing more carrots in than they used to, and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll start to evolve that a little bit more. But a lot of stir frying and those kinds of things is what we've been doing.
Well, this is fantastic. I really appreciate you joining. I think some of the advice you gave to salespeople and sales leaders in this space and really any space, it's applicable to any other market, just fantastic.
Thank
Really
you.
have always admired, your approach to both sales and sales leadership and, really appreciate you sharing those insights. And again, congrats on all your success. Thank you for stepping into the ring with me. Julie Stadlbauer, EVP of Progyny. Glad you brought the props, the stress balls. Those were great. Thank you so much for joining.
Norm, it's such an honor. We love your work. You do an incredibly wonderful job for us. We wouldn't be here without some of the talent that you've helped us bring on board, and appreciate the opportunity here.
Thank you for joining. Please like, comment, and subscribe below if you enjoyed it.